Welcome to Work the Plan. The problem with much of the productivity and planning advice out there is that it begins with a vision for a 5-year outcome. When we as mothers at home try to do that, we are rather at a loss. We might not even know how many children we'll have in 5 years. If your oldest is 5, you're not likely to accurately foresee what it's like to have a 10-year-old. And the same thing is true if your oldest is 10 and you're trying to predict 15. We have to put one foot in front of the other where we are, not get too wrapped up in predictions and visions. We should have a general direction, but we don't know how that will play out. Rather than try to shoot for some 5-year outcome, we should have a general purpose and direction. And this comes, of course, by knowing our vocations, and then make a short-term plan. Make a plan that is only 6 to 12 weeks in breadth. We can work towards ends in a chunk that small. The ends might not be as exciting as a grand 5-year vision, but that's because it's actually realistic. Looking at that shorter amount of time allows us to make smart and meaningful choices about what's best to do next. Intervals are the key to the mindset shift that allows us to move our goals forward in bite-sized chunks with reasonable iterations rather than waiting for the stars to align and our perfect plan to spring forth. I'm sure we've all been there before. We make a grand plan and then life gets in the way and we're left floundering and flying by the seat of our pants anyway. When we fly by the seat of our pants, we usually excuse ourselves by saying that planning is a waste of time or an exercise in futility. But that's not true. One military saying is that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. But that doesn't mean that the military doesn't plan. After all, it's easier to roll with the punches that life does throw when we have a plan to deviate from, than we can adapt from, which we cannot do if we are aimless or clueless. Even when our plans don't play out the way that we expected, having a plan guides us when it's our own mental energy hindering progress and motivation. A plan also reminds us of the direction that we're trying to move toward. The process of planning itself is useful to us. The fact that we have a plan is indicative that we've thought through where we want to go and how to get there. That thinking through and writing down informs the intuitive choices that we need to make on a moment-by-moment basis throughout the day. We have a lot on our plates. It's easy to feel flustered, scattered, overwhelmed, and pulled in too many directions. As I am always on the alert for strategies and habits that will help me stay afloat better, not only in my own home, but also in my head. Sometimes it doesn't look like it in my home. Sometimes, even when it doesn't look in my home like I'm drowning, I am still drowning in the chaos inside my head. And sometimes when the house looks chaotic, it's actually because I'm doing okay in my head and following through on the right priorities, because the state of the home wasn't the right priority at the time. To stay sane and productive, we need not only a plan and priorities, we also need perspective. We need a clear view above the fray. What is the big picture and where are we in it? If you don't know where you're going, you're not likely to get there. I love double meanings and layered meanings in phrases, and I think that this one presents us with more than meets the eye if we examine it. What is the end? Yes, we're going to talk about ends again. To review, end has 3 meanings: the final part of something, including a story, the furthest or most extreme point of something, and the goal or result that you're seeking to achieve. So let's look at all three layers of meaning. We're going to begin with the goal in mind. What result are we trying to achieve? If we don't know the answer to that question, then it's no wonder that we feel scattered and unable to decide what to do next, unsure if what we're doing is good enough. We also have to begin with the extreme point in mind. This meaning of end is the one used in such phrases as, I'm at the end of my rope. And that's how we feel when we've not had the time to step back, refresh ourselves, and remind ourselves of our true end. The extreme point on something is its teleological end. It's the eternal point, the final meaning. What is man's chief end? The Catechism asks. And the answer that we must know and must be working towards is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. So we must begin with the final story in mind. We're all living a story, and it's not over until the end of our lives. And even then, we will find that this has only been the beginning, because our eternal story will be praising God in a new heavens and the new earth. That is perspective. All stories must have bad things happen in them. Struggles, temptations, difficulties, troubles, for there to be any story at all, for there to be a final resolution that satisfies our desire for a happy ending. And God will bring about that final happy ending. We won't. We can rest in faith and hope when we remember that. We simply work the plan, roll with the punches, and choose the right next thing.